Great, back with you tonight, John in Focus, and thanks for staying on. Now, over 7,000 people have been murdered in South Africa in the 3 months between July and September this year. Police Minister Bheki Cele made the revelations during the release of the second quarter crime statistics earlier today. The minister revealed that KwaZulu-Natal and the Western Cape recorded the most murder cases. Joining us now to discuss these numbers and how they impact the lives of ordinary South Africans is the South African Policing Union spokesperson, Lesiba Thobakgale. Lesiba, good evening. Good to have you once again today. We had this conversation, I'm sure you remember, the last quarter, and more statistics are being released and the numbers are going up. For someone who is in policing and someone who is in that space, after we release the statistics in the previous quarter, what actually happens? Is there conversation that the police are having to say, right, folks, let's come up with a strategy on how we're going to see a better outcome in the next quarter?
Thank you, Thabo, to have us tonight. We wish to pass our greetings to your viewers back at home. We are indeed concerned. If you remember previously, we raised that concern to say we do not hear of anything every time the quarterly crime statistics are released that will reflect clearly on what mitigating facts or interventions were undertaken in order to mitigate or to fight crime. That has not been happening, and we would have loved to see the minister, when he's releasing the crime stats, to really show that this quarter, this is what we have shown. Compared to the previous quarter, these are the interventions that we've put in place. But there's also a whole lot of other factors that are involved, Thabo, and also your viewers at home, because since the 31st of March this year, we had the appointment of the new National Commissioner, General Masemola, and you remember clearly we were hopeful that now we have somebody who is also a seasoned police officer. But we have a crisis in the SAPS. SAPS, it is on autopilot because the National Commissioner of Police is nowhere to be found. We cannot be able to measure his performance clearly because when we look at how the levels of crime are going up, having over 7,000 people murdered in this country, when you look at the rate of rape in this country, clearly it has skyrocketed. We have never had such levels of crime even previously when we compare during the reign of General Masemola. And then that is clear to say that his leadership, indeed, it is indeed worrying. And him not having a very critical post being filled, like the post of crime detection. There is no Deputy National Commissioner under crime detection, which plays a very critical role and which on its own it affects the level of conviction. The conviction rate, if you look, it has went up because there is no clear leadership. All we see the National Commissioner is doing is to fly using the South African Police Services jet, attending crime scenes together with the minister. And we strongly believe that that resource is being abused instead of it being channeled to deal with crime. But he goes to attend crime scenes whereby detectives already are there at those specific crime scenes. They are dealing with it. There is no need to have the minister there. There is no need to have the National Commissioner. The question comes, Thabo, to say, when does the National Commissioner get time to go and be in his office to really strategize on how to deal with crime? Because he's all over with the police jet. And it remains to be a concern. And we're also asking the president of the country to say, when is he going to measure the performance of the National Commissioner? The quarterly crime stats, they clearly show us that indeed subsidies on autopilot. Crime, it is out of control in this country. Are we going to wait for his term to come to an end, for him to be measured, for the president to measure his performance? Because indeed, he has been hired, he has been appointed to be the National Commissioner to deal with crime. That is his primary reason and primary duty that he is carrying on his shoulder.
Right.
But he is not coming into party when it comes to those issues, which are very critical issues. Imagine what is happening on the ground where members are not getting the clear leadership that they're supposed to receive from the National Commissioner. And so
when you're saying he's nowhere to be found, Lesiba, are you saying he's not in his office? We saw during testimony now given around what actually happened during the unrest, that the police minister apparently couldn't get hold of the police commissioner, who was then Bheki Cele, phoned him and just couldn't get a hold of him, or whether he was in the country or where he was. There was just no clarity. When you say he is nowhere to be found, what do you mean? Is he not in his office? Is he not accessible? Is he way in over his head, not quite sure how to deal with what he's doing? What exactly is nowhere to be found?
He's not doing what he's appointed to do. Remember, Butabo, when we speak of crime statistics, we have alluded to the fact of issues like implementing restructuring, re-establishment of specialized units. So when we say that he's nowhere to be found, all the proposals that we as a union brought to his attention to say these issues need to be attended, he has got no time to attend because he's forever attending crime scenes, flying, using the South African Police Services jet to go to attend crime scenes. And he's supposed to be strategically ensuring that he gives direction to the South African Police Services. He needs to ensure that in his office he's available to ensure that everything that needs to be implemented in order to command his forces, everybody who works under himself, to ensure that the appointment of the Deputy National Commissioner, or who will be responsible for crime detection, to ensure that we also have crime intelligence divisional commissioner appointed to ensure that he commands all of his forces in order to fight crime. But he's not doing that. Those are the concerns that we are raising, and when we are saying that he's nowhere to be found. Even us, when we request for meetings to say, come, let us discuss these very serious issues to implement. We sat with him in few meetings, but we see no implementation. So what do we call that? Because his primary duty, it is to ensure that crime in this country, it is brought under control, or actually it is even eradicated. We need the National Commissioner who will go and know what is it that is there for. You can remember when he was appointed, we were very hopeful, we were very excited, but now we are disappointed when we see that he's not the person whom we thought that he was, because we believed that he's a seasoned police officer. He would be able to take the South African Police Services to the next level.
Was he not a Deputy National Commissioner?
He was.
He was.
And we are,
so when he moved, that particular position was never filled.
Remember, he was under Vispol. Currently, he filled that position of visible policy. That one, there is somebody who has filled it. But remember, crime detection and crime intelligence clearly play a very critical role. And if he's unable to fill a position that is that concerns his own Deputy National Commissioner under crime detection. Now, when we see the crime levels spiraling so up in this manner, it clearly shows that he's not taking the issue of crime in this country. He's not able to command his forces. That is why we are calling on the President to say that the ship of the South African Police Services, it is sinking, and he has to do something about it. He has to measure the performance of the National Commissioner as soon as possible in order to determine on whether is he eligible to continue to remain to be the National Commissioner. There needs to be a board of inquiry into the South African Police Services, because there's a whole lot of allegations that have emerged against senior police officers. We don't need something like that within the SAPS, because they have to fight crime. But if there's such allegations that are coming, indeed, it really shows that the President has to take an action and measure the performance of the National Commissioner. And the candidates themselves, they will speak for themselves, because at the end of the day, the citizenry, they are suffering. Police officers who have to perform their duties without any leadership being given to them, without them being commanded accordingly as they are forces by the Commander-in-Chief. So, they remain to be leaders.
Are you saying, for example, a remedy like what the minister is telling us about today, saying, well, part of the reason why there has been these challenges is because there is less police visibility and there are poor response times. These are issues that could be addressed by putting more boots on the ground, investing more in hardware, so buying, for example, more vehicles, ensuring that police are able to respond on time. Are you saying we could do those things, spend money on those things, and we would still not see an improvement?
Butabo, we can implement all of those. We can put more boots on the ground. We can enhance technological advances, all of those devices that are there. We can use the drones, we can use whatsoever devices, 4IR devices that are there. But if there is no leadership, clear leadership, because currently what SAPS is lacking, it is leadership. And leadership is supposed to be provided by the National Commissioner of Police, General Masemola.
And what is the challenge then in feeling, for example, a post as critical as crime detection? Is it because we lack the personnel, there are no trained people who will be able to occupy that position?
We have a lot of capable people, Butabo, who can be appointed to be the Deputy National Commissioner Crime Detection. We've got a whole lot of capable, trained and qualifying people who could be clearly appointed at the crime intelligence, want to become a divisional commissioner there. Now we are seeing the national commissioner playing the political part. Now we start to ask ourselves to say, if he is not filling those posts, which political appointee is he reserving those posts for? Whereas we see the high levels of crime going up in this manner, because we've been making this call. You would remember clearly, Mutabo, about the issue of crime intelligence, and now with the issue of the crime detection, Deputy National Commissioner, because they play a very critical role. SAPS has very capable people who can be appointed there, but those appointments are not forthcoming. And as an organization, we raised those issues several times with the Office of the National Commissioner, with the National Commissioner General Masemola himself, but he's not coming into the party. Now we are asking ourselves, is he a police officer, or is he now there to push any specific political interest in filling those posts? Whom is he reserving those posts for at the expense of the blood of South Africans, at the expense of the rape victims, at the expense of those families of those victims who were murdered, at the expense of the 22 police officers and those 2 security officers who were murdered in this quarter, at the expense of children who were murdered and children who were violated, at the expense of the gender-based violence victims who kept on suffering. As we have seen, the crime stats are showing us indeed that crime has went up. Yeah. Those are the questions that we are asking. The president has to act now before the ship of the South African police services sinks to the latter.
Lesiba Thobakgale, as always, much appreciated. Thanks for coming on tonight. The South African Policing Union calling for leadership and calling for the president to hold people to account in terms of their performance. Otherwise, the ship is